See me, they want to see you. This is Brant Gardner. He's our Book of Mormon Mesoamerican avid clue detecting pseudo-scholar. Not really. I was kidding about the pseudo, Brant.
Not according to many people.
Many of you have heard me rant and rave about his Book of Mormon commentary. And it's a 6th volume, right?
6 volumes.
6th volume. It is simply outstanding. It's by Greg Cofford Books. You actually started this as an online adventure, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I mean, you didn't set out to write publish a printed text.
It was in the back of my mind that might happen, but it turned out differently than we thought. What we were originally going to do was have an online commentary, and the people in the online community would add information to it, and it would be a collaborative effort.
Yeah, because I remember that's how I first got to know you. Someone recommended me go look up your stuff on the Book of Mormon.
It was on the scriptural list.
Yeah,
we'd send the information out, and then the idea is everybody would talk about it, we'd learn something about it, compile it all together, and maybe someday it would be worth publishing. And then the reality was that there weren't that many people that were adding anything to it, and I got addicted to it, so I decided that I'd
Thank goodness you did. That is one good addiction anyway. Okay, you said I've actually had folks ask me, as I've been doing my video Book of Mormon commentary, so to speak, on YouTube. I had someone ask me, what does Brant mean by it's time to find Mesoamerica in the Book of Mormon? What is the big deal about Mesoamerica? Could you kind of share some of the reasons why you focus on Mesoamerica as opposed to others who focus up here in the New York area or the...
Well, what you have to do if you're going to find a location for the Book of Mormon, well, I guess I should back up one more, which is why do you care about finding a location for the Book of Mormon?
Good point. Why should we care?
Yeah, I mean, if the Book of Mormon is true for completely spiritual reasons, knowing where it took place, it doesn't really teach you anything spiritual. So it isn't necessarily the spiritual information that you're looking for. It's the same kind of background that you get when you say the New Testament took place in a particular time and place. And if I know more about that particular time and place in the New Testament, I can learn things about the New Testament that otherwise I would not have known.
Okay.
And missing that context in the Book of Mormon, unless we can put it somewhere in the world. So now the question is, where do you put it in the world? Well, we want it somewhere in the New World. We know that much. Now, where in the New World? Well, there are a lot of things that have to combine. You have to have a geography that fits. You have to have a topography that fits. You have to have a hydrology.
What do you mean by topography?
Topography, the mountains have to be in the right places.
And the valleys. Okay.
Mountains and valleys have to be in
the
the right place.
And the hydrology, what do you mean by that?
The waterways have to be in the right place.
Okay.
You have to have a riverside.
There you go.
The riverside has to be in a valley. It has to have mountains around it. It has to be flowing in a certain direction. It has to be narrow enough that you can cross it in a certain location, because these are important stories in the Book of Mormon that depend upon that information.
A lot of the war stories in Alma. I noticed your commentary on Alma was the thickest, the biggest, and that's the one with all about the war. Are you just enmeshed with military history, or
no, really, not necessarily.
You really went gung ho on Alma,
and you need to know. You need to know why. You need to know what he's telling you and whether or not that makes any sense.
I'm looking forward to getting to it.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, it turns out that, from what little I can understand of a military situation, the tactics make sense. One of the other things that is kind of fascinating with some of the tactics is you do find them later in the Aztec world, where you get information where they say this is how we did such, and it's going to be parallel to some of the things that we've seen in Alma. So these are tactics that had been in that area, of course not saying that they learned them from each other, but these are things that, if somebody tricks you once this way and it works, somebody else is going to learn about it, and they're going to say, this is a good idea, let's...
And you say that is chronicled in the Aztec?
That's right.
Some of the Aztec chronicles?
There's a couple of them, yeah.
But that is later than the Book of Mormon, of course.
But of course, you don't get very many texts from Book of Mormon times. In fact,
no, you don't.
Most of the texts you're getting starting about 200 or 80, 200 and after. So for most of the Book of Mormon time, we don't have any texts at all And what few texts we have during Book of Mormon times are basically just the fact that it gives you a date and you don't have much information.
Yeah, most of those are off the monuments, aren't they?
Well, you'll get some off of monuments and off of smaller things. But the Maya texts that they've been translating tell us tremendous information about the Maya, but later than the Book of Mormon.
Right.
They're all written down and telling us.
So we're not teaching as LDS scholars. We are not teaching, just to keep this crystal clear, that the Mayan are not the Nephites. We are teaching that they are not the Nephites.
I would certainly say that, and I would encourage people to keep saying that.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing that you can say is that Nephites would have participated in the same culture that the Maya did. That there are elements of that Maya culture that you can see mirrored in the Book of Mormon. You see some of the effects of that culture.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that they're the same people.
Okay, let me ask you this too then, Brant. I've had some LDS folks who have asked me, why would we even be interested in seeing the parallels with the Mayan or Mesoamerican with the Nephite or the Lamanite, because the Book of Mormon specifically says the Nephite nation was destroyed. So how they're gone, they're done. How do you respond to that? It ends at 420 AD.
It ends in 420 AD. But in the ancient world, life changes at a much slower pace than it does now. We're used to the fact that in the modern world things change rapidly, and in my own lifetime I've gone from barely banging out on a manual typewriter to an electric typewriter to finally ending up on a computer. That kind of rapid change of technology is part of the modern age but not part of the ancient age. In the ancient world, things were pretty stable for thousands of years.
Oh, okay.
And if you have cultural patterns, ways of adapting to the world, the corn is going to have to be grown in a certain way, and that isn't going to change over 1,000 years. The way you use water isn't going to change. A lot of your life, and in agricultural societies, constancy is much more frequent than change. So when we say, what can we learn about the Nephites from any other culture that's been around them, you cannot say that they were the same, but if you learn about the other cultures, you can then start drawing parallels and say, if they did this, I see the effect of that in the Book of Mormon.
Oh,
and so what we look at in the Book of Mormon is saying, in the text that we see, where do we see actions, where do we see events, where do we see reasons that draw their information out of this Mesoamerican culture? And if we can match up the appropriate context behind it, all of a sudden the text makes a lot of sense to us. Go back to my example of the New Testament. If I took the New Testament and I placed the New Testament in China, and I tried to read the events in the New Testament against Chinese history and Chinese culture,
that helps me.
It would not make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But if I read it against the Middle East and the understanding of the Middle East and how they believed, all of a sudden things that it says will begin to make sense.
That's interesting, because the same type of culture and themes in the Middle East, let's say right in Israel, weren't only just in Israel and in only Jesus' day. I mean, you've got lots of other countries all the way around the area. So that's one reason why we feel comfortable.
Culture.
There's a Mediterranean, that's the word I was looking for, yeah. It's not just in Israel, it actually goes all the way up the Mediterranean, doesn't it? All the way up into Turkey and Europe as far as that goes.
There are certain ways of looking at the world and certain concepts that they have that were kind of universal in this area. And so when you know what they are, you say, here's what people in this area believed. Then you go to the New Testament and you say, do I see the New Testament reflecting those beliefs? And you get them in the honor culture, where they talk a lot about shame. A lot of those things make a lot more sense when you understand the honor-shame culture coming out of the Middle East. The eye single to the glory of God makes a lot more sense when you realize that people in that area believe that the eye actually emitted light. And
Oh, as
so it
opposed
wasn't
to
a receiver
receiving.
of light, it was an
How
emisser
interesting.
of light.
Uh-huh.
And so that changes the perception of what they were saying and why that showed you something about the inside of a person. Well, it was coming out from the inside of the person, and that's why, you know,